All right, we are back with episode 14 of a podcast for all seasons. This week we are going to be talking about some DC movie rumors, as is indicated in the title. We've been off the air for a couple weeks. There's just hasn't been a ton in the way of big news or rumors. This week there's been quite a few developments, or over the last week or so. So we're going to cover some of that stuff. I'm going to turn it over to my hostess with the mostest, and he'll be able to tell you pretty much what's going to be on topic today. What's going on, Eric?
Hi, Josh, and hi, everybody listening at home. This is Eric Joseph of DarkKnightNews.com, ComicBookMovie.com, and Multiverse Entertainment. And as Josh said, we're talking DC movie rumors today. We don't really like to give much credence to rumors, but these are ones that have come from very reputable sources. Therefore, we're willing to talk about them. We don't talk about anything from just any site that's making up crap to get hits. In fact, if you want to read a little something about that, go check out a satire article I did over at Dark Knight News from last Sunday, where I said my dog was cast to play Ace the Wonder Hound in Batman vs. Superman. And then at the end of the article, I expressed my displeasure with people making up stupid rumors. I'm not going to say which sites those are, per se, but certain sites have a reputation for lying, and I don't want to get sued by naming them outright. Anyway, a fan film from a local filmmaker here in the Detroit area. It's Gotham City Sirens, kind of probably loosely based off the comic book. It's directed by Terrell Colbert. If you want to learn more about the project, go to darkknightnews.com and look at my recent article about it, and it can also link you to the Kickstarter page so you can fund the project, because they're hoping to make it into a web series, and the teaser trailer's up there as well. Anyway, back to our topic at hand. The first thing we want to discuss is a rumored DC on film slate that came out roughly a week ago from Nikki Fink, formerly of Deadline, which is one of the more reputable trades in the movie industry. And she said she has it on good authority that DC is, I should say Warner Brothers, because DC doesn't make films per se. DC's a division of Warner Brothers, a property. They are planning to make several films a year in the coming years, and some of it seems pretty plausible. And Kevin Smith backed it up, and he said he's known about it for a while, and he just couldn't talk about it. Recently, he was talking. This was like maybe a month or so ago, because I remember doing an article about Dark Knight News. Is when he said on an episode of Hollywood Babylon, one of his podcasts, that DC was building a huge Justice League story over the course of several movies, and this could very well be what he was talking about. But here's the list according to Nikki Fink, and then I'll give you my analysis of it when I'm done listing. She says Batman vs. Superman Dawn of Justice, which we all know is May 2016, will be followed by Shazam in July 2016, with Sandman coming Christmas 2016, and then as we move to 2017, we would have Justice League in May, Wonder Woman in July, and then a Flash Green Lantern team-up film around Christmas, and then Man of Steel 2 in 2018. Now, the 2016 stuff, I think, is 100% doable. Shazam, we know Warner Brothers has wanted to make into a movie for some time now, and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson has said whatever DC character he's playing in a film would have the powers on the level of Superman, and because he hasn't fight if he's playing a hero or villain. Ken Levitt attached. That could very well be 2016. Justice League in 2017 sounds completely plausible, if not 2018. But the other two films in 2017 sounded a little suspect to me. Wonder Woman in July. You know, if you told me maybe Wonder Woman in Christmas or Wonder Woman in 2018, that's more plausible because look at this. We're talking Batman versus Superman, Justice League, and Wonder Woman all within 14 months of each other. That is a lot for Gal Gadot, who's playing Wonder Woman, to handle. I mean, how could you possibly shoot 3 films of this scale and release them in such short order? Because you could easily shoot Justice League back-to-back with Batman vs. Superman or relatively close to it, but Zack Snyder likely won't be the director of Wonder Woman, and Gal Gadot, it wouldn't give her much time to rest, and I don't know, it just seems a little funny for that. And then Flash Green Lantern, I would like to see, you know, it'd be a cool Brave and the Bold type of movie, but why not have that in 2018? Because why have 2 team-up movies in 1 year? And to pair them up isn't that bad of an idea. I'm still going to believe Green Lantern's in a movie again when I see it because Warner Brothers did it once, it flopped, and I'm kind of suspicious that they would even give Green Lantern another chance, which I believe we've talked about before in a previous episode. I believe we said that in episode 11 when we were doubting there would ever be another Green Lantern movie, but it's probably not going to be Hal Jordan. Definitely not played by Ryan Reynolds. Perhaps, you know, Jon Stewart, maybe Kyle Rayner. But, you know, a team-up film, I'd say, is way more likely than a solo film because it's, okay, we don't know if Flash or Green Lantern could possibly draw an audience. We're saying that's the thinking of, or perhaps the thinking of WB. I mean, Flash is getting a TV show, but don't count on that character played by Grant Gustin to be the same one that exists in the universe of the films. Maybe the only thing Flash or Green Lantern could put enough asses in seats for a solo film, but, you know, let's team them up and maybe that will give us something. I could see that being the logic behind it. But like I said, why have 2 team-ups in 1 year? Now, Man of Steel 2, I'm glad to see that Superman will hopefully be getting his own solo film, and another film which we just found out today, and it's another rumor I'm willing to give the time of day because it came from El Mayembe of Latino Review, and a lot of people give him too much shit, and I personally think a lot of the stuff he says pans out, maybe not 100% of what he, or I should say not exactly the way he says it's going to, because, you know, things change all the time behind the scenes in Hollywood before they actually get broken by actual outlets. But he is saying that Ben Affleck will get a solo Batman movie in 2019, tentatively titled The Batman, and that would be a year or 2 after a Justice League film, and that sounds 100% plausible to me. But before we go on to other rumors, and I'm just kind of drawing blank at anything else I may have to say about this upcoming film slate, maybe once Josh lends his opinion for a bit, it'll jog my memory. But what do you think of this possible movie slate, Josh? And just think what do you think may or may not happen, and your expectations for these films?
Well, first things first, when we first heard this rumor, it came across to me as the kind of rumor mongering that you would see on websites that, you know, don't exactly report honest news. It sounded like a bunch of nonsense, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's not true. But once it came out that there was very likely some legitimacy to this rumor, aka Kevin Smith had more or less said, yeah, this is kind of what I was talking about when when I said that they were building this larger universe and eventually leading up towards a large Justice League film. That gave it obviously some heady weight. I know that Kevin Smith has done a lot of promotional stuff for Warner Brothers, and it makes it very likely that it is true. The other thing is the Batman versus Superman. We all thought that that was going to be Man of Steel 2. So the first thing that kind of stood out to me is the fact that it's like Man of Steel 2 is happening now in 2018. I could see why they maybe decided to diverge into a little offshoot. Some people have said, Superman doesn't work as a single character. Me and Eric have had conversations about that. He works better as a member of a group or a team up, which is just complete nonsense. He's been in his own comic for 60 plus years, 75 plus years, excuse me, and it's kind of ridiculous that that's a concept. But either way, Shazam, interesting. Is The Rock attached? Who knows? It would be very cool to see him as either the main character Captain Marvel, aka Shazam. It would be even more awesome to see him as Black Adam. He's one of my absolute favorite villains, and to see a monster like The Rock, bring him to life would be very cool. It could even theoretically lead into him potentially being maybe a villain in a Justice League film. That's definitely the kind of power level that would take a team to beat. Outside of like a Doomsday style character. Like Eric mentioned, the Wonder Woman coming out so shortly in terms of right after Batman versus Superman and Justice League is definitely a concern. Sandman's completely doable, so that one didn't really concern me at all. And the one that really blew my mind and made me question this as a legitimate rumor was the Flash Green Lantern team up. First things first, I thought it was an unusual team up. Not to say that it doesn't have some, comic book basis and historical, accuracy as far as what kind of major characters have teamed up traditionally in DC Comics. I thought that Flash and Green Lantern was a slightly unusual one. I think that the Flash could be great as a standalone character, and I think that Green Lantern's next film would have been spectacular when we had Sinestro versus Green Lantern. That'll unfortunately never see the light of day, and we'll never see what was the greatest villain that never happened in Mark Strong's Sinestro. That'll be one of the great regrets of movie making history that never happened. But I thought that was an unusual team up. I guess I'll believe that one when I see it. Flash, yeah, sure. Like Eric said, are they going to bring Green Lantern back? I mean, I know the movie cost a lot to produce and make, and it didn't make back really. It didn't really profit any. It wasn't any. I mean, I guess when I hear box office failure, I think of something that essentially puts a studio in the red. Obviously, they're not in the business of breaking even either, especially when franchise building, but you could definitely have a lot worse than essentially breaking even or making very minute profits, if any, in the Green Lantern movie with Ryan Reynolds. But I think everyone knows that character's, or at least that iteration of the character, is never happening on screen again. Definitely not with Ryan Reynolds at the helm. But it is sad for other reasons because there was some great stuff there to build off of. They were trying to build. That's almost a universe in and of itself. But that's the one that stands out as strange to me. Batman 2019. I'm almost like, why are they waiting so long after 2016? But if there is a Justice League movie that obviously Batman will be in 2017, it stands to reason to give him a couple years. So we're not being just oversaturated with Batman films. That's definitely something that can happen. I do think that this is a lot of films to happen in such a short period of time, and I guess I'll believe it when I see it. Like Eric said, things change in studios all the time. It's one of the reasons that even quote unquote legitimate rumor sources like places, Entertainment Weekly, Variety, other very reliable sources traditionally can hit it very close to the mark and still be off. Like Eric said, El Mayambi's a reliable source. He talked about a Batman Superman team up quite a bit ago. It just, it ended up being different actors, but he was close to the mark as far as what was eventually going to happen. And here we're getting Batman versus Superman. Now, was he speculating and he just happened to be right? Who knows? But I mean, we've talked more in the past about knowing what rumors have validity based on a combination of understanding the way that these movies typically tend to happen, and putting our ear to the ground and knowing exactly what rumors to listen to, and which ones are the most legitimate. We're going to get into another one of those big ones right now. I'll let Eric talk about that one. I don't really have much to say. Did I jog your memory, Eric? Did you have anything else to say about the upcoming lineup or rumored lineup?
Not really. I guess we'll know at San Diego Comic-Con in July, because Nikki Fink said that is the slate of films that will be announced next month. So it's not like we're going to have to wait long. I think at the very least they would probably announce maybe everything up to Justice League, because things change in Hollywood all the time. I think it was on the Facebook page in a discussion. Bill Jet Ramey from Batman on Film, whom I've mentioned at least once or twice on this podcast. I find him to be a very respectable person when it comes to fan sites. That's another thing I just want to put as a side note. Not only do you have trades like Variety and The Hollywood Reporter, Deadline, but there are also fan sites that I give a certain amount of respect to, like Batman on Film or Modern Myth Media. So if those guys are willing to give a little credence to a rumor, I respect those guys, their opinions and whatnot. But he said that he thinks that at least, or from what he's hearing behind the scenes, at least part of this lineup will come true. But who knows? Things change all the time at Warner Brothers. But I at least think that up to the Justice League movie, we're going to get those announcements. Beyond that, it doesn't necessarily mean the films beyond Justice League aren't true. It's just Warner Brothers may not be ready to announce anything, and maybe they're going to test the waters and see what characters work and make the announcements beyond that. But the next thing we want to talk about is Jason Momoa as Aquaman, a guy who has repeatedly denied his involvement with Batman vs. Superman. Josh got to meet him at Motor City Comic-Con last month. I unfortunately did it, but he walked by me at one point, and that guy's pretty huge. He could easily be a pro wrestler. But Aquaman is said to get a cameo introduction in Batman vs. Superman before getting a more expanded role in the Justice League film. This, of course, was reported, at least was now have said to be an actual casting by HitFix over the weekend. And at first, I was talking with one of my colleagues, Adam, over at Dark Knight News. He ran a story over at DKN for us on Sunday, and we were thinking, what? We're going to label this a rumor for now, because he and I and other people at Dark Knight News have just become so disillusioned with the rumors as well, like you, Josh. There's so many rumors behind Batman vs. Superman that haven't panned out, and we wanted a little more weight to the story before we would call it something tangible. And then a few days later, Variety and The Hollywood Reporter were backing it up, and as we said several times in this broadcast alone, those are some of the most respected trades in Hollywood, and when they say something, it's not anything to sneeze at. Granted, we have not had a press release from Warner Brothers. We didn't even have one when Ray Fisher was supposedly cast as Cyborg a few months ago, but Warner Brothers never denied that. But on the other side of the fence, we don't always get official press confirmation when they cast characters in Marvel movies, but we tend to take those as true when the major outlets report it, and then, filming starts, and there they are. But one thing I said in an article today over at DKN having to do with Momoa's appearance on Jimmy Kimmel Live this week is that I was wondering if they didn't want to give official press releases for the casting of Cyborg and Aquaman because Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman are certainly the main focus of this upcoming film. But I was wondering if Cyborg and Aquaman were supposed to be surprises because they're cameos. Now, right out of the gate, you can check out the video over at darkknightnews.com. I have it up there today of right out of the gate in the interview, Jimmy Kimmel asks Momoa about Aquaman, and he says, oh, those are just rumors, Jimmy. And then right there on the air, Jimmy pulls out an article from Variety saying Jason Momoa has been cast as Aquaman, and then Momoa kind of gets a little coy, as it were. And I don't remember the quote verbatim, but Jimmy says, are we going to see you in green tights? And Jason Momoa asks, well, would you want to see me in green tights? And you have to just see the look on his face. And yeah, if you've seen people kind of dancing around a question, the guy's Aquaman. He's just adhering to an NDA most likely. But if he was not Aquaman at this point, he would just flat out say, I'm not Aquaman. I have nothing to do with this movie. What do you think about the whole development? Personally, I think Momoa is a great choice. Anyone who's read a comic book or seen a cartoon other than Super Friends knows how much of a badass Aquaman is, and I think Jason Momoa can really give this role the gravitas it needs to show that, hey, Aquaman is a guy who can, pick up a truck and hurl it down the block. The guy doesn't need to be in water to be a badass. What do you think?
Definitely, yeah. I'll get to that in a second. The first thing I was going to say is, yeah, I really hope that this rumor, if they're going to put Aquaman in the DC films, A, he is a great character. B, if you want him to be taken seriously and you don't want him to basically be a walking joke, you have got to make him right out of the gate. I was talking to Eric about this the other day. You have got to instantly declare him as an absolute badass. He needs to be, without question, an absolute alpha male, extreme leadership qualities, and they need to do what they've done in the New 52 Aquaman, which is instantly address the idea of Aquaman as a ridiculous hero. In the case of the New 52, they do it from the perspective of the villain, and they're kind of like, I think it was a bank robbery in the middle of town. It's miles and miles and miles away from any source of water. Not that the bank robbers were thinking about, oh shit, we better look out for Aquaman, but all of a sudden Aquaman just drops down in the middle of town, and they're like, "Who the fuck's this guy? It's Aquaman." Yeah, smash him with your car because it's an Aquaman and he's a joke. And then he just like pulls out his gigantic 8-foot trident and just plunges it through an entire truck and throws it like a half a mile. And it's instantly like, yeah, please assume I'm a joke because I'm going to throw you in a car a half a mile. And they very much address like every joke about Aquaman very quickly in the first few issues, and then turn it on its head. Is like the whole idea of like, ha ha ha, you talk to fish. No, I don't talk to fish. I psychically control fish. I basically I'm psionically connecting to the base of their nerve brain and forcing them to do my will. It's not like we're having a conversation. And when you think about it like that, if you saw a character that was able to communicate with an infinite amount of any animal life, aka Animal Man from DC Comics as well, it may not sound like an extreme power in comparison to, say, Superman, until you're anywhere near the ocean or any other source of animal life, and all of a sudden you have a gray whale jump on top of you, which they've done in the comics before. It makes him extremely powerful. At the very, but they kind of do the joke of, yeah, he talks to fish. No, he doesn't talk to fish. He psychically controls them. It's a completely different aspect. He also has some basic, telekinetic or telepathic abilities, even to the point of I think sometimes he's been able to put humans into like catatonic states. So he's powerful on a level that most people don't realize. I did meet Momoa at Comic-Con and didn't talk to him about it because at the time we thought it was kind of a ludicrous rumor. I talked to him about his upcoming Road to Paloma, which he is acting and directing in. He also was producer on it, and I just mentioned, he was promoting that film more than anything. Obviously, he had a lot of Game of Thrones fans coming up to him, and I more or less told him, hey, tell me about your movie. Do I need to watch it? And he was like, he's very Jason Momoa for anyone who's ever ran in or seen how he is in real life. He was like, fuck yeah, you need to watch it. He's like, why are you even asking me this stupid question? Yeah, you need to watch it. It's going to be totally badass. And I was like, you've convinced me. It was like there was no argument. I took him at his word because he was like, he said it with such legitimate zeal and confidence. It was like, okay, this is definitely the kind of guy who's got the gravitas to, throw it around. People love his Khal Drogo from Game of Thrones, and as I was talking to Eric about it, it's like most people who don't watch that show but know about him in that show don't realize he was in it for a very short period of time, and the fans of that show and even the books absolutely love the fact that this guy was Khal Drogo. He's become a very pop culture, very, very pop culture character. So I'm excited with the fact that it's a possibility. I sure hope that if anyone is going to be this character, that it is Jason Momoa. The fact that he doesn't have shiny blonde hair and isn't the super Aryan Aquaman doesn't bug me in the least, because I think it even kind of almost comes across as being more on the side of a realism as far as an Atlantean merman is realistic. To see him as kind of the gritty kind of guy that Jason Momoa is in real life. I mean, he was walking around with full beard, kind of scraggly hair, just gigantic hulking, his almost 7 foot frame, walking around with open beer at Comic-Con. He is that guy. He doesn't just play that guy. He is that guy in real life. So if you're gonna make Aquaman a badass, you've cast the right guy, Warner Brothers, and hopefully it is true. But it hasn't been 100% confirmed yet. So again, it's in Rumorville. It's just in the later stages of the more legitimate rumors. As we got rumors about the Batman costume from, say, Kevin Smith that ended up being almost verbatim, which he said it was a mix of Jim Lee and Frank Miller, and that's exactly what it is. And so sometimes rumors can be spot on when they're coming from reliable sources, and Variety has been that, as Jimmy Kimmel pointed out. It's like, these aren't guys who are just bullshitting, folks. These are legitimate rumor people, and it's definitely going to be that way. But that's all I have to say about Momoa. What else did you have to mention about that, or did you want to go on?
I just want to say I'm completely confident now that he's Aquaman. I'm not even sure I even want to call it a rumor anymore. It's just WB has not confirmed it, but I just have complete confidence that it's true. But there's we'll tie these last two rumors together since they have to do with Lex Luthor. This first one came out of Batman News a few days ago. They said they had the scoop about Lex Luthor's hair in Batman vs. Superman, and people are blowing up about it that Lex Luthor's having hair, but they don't realize that, he could very well lose his hair at some point in the film. Possibly Superman's the cause, and that's another reason for his vendetta. But he has long hair in the movie, and Batman News, I guess, has had a lot of apparently someone on set really likes that website and is giving them pictures of things, but they didn't get a picture of Eisenberg, but they did get a description and apparently his Lex Luthor speaks with and has the mannerisms of someone who pounds energy drinks all day, and allegedly the front lobby in LexCorp has a basketball court with a neon LexCorp sign, and Lex makes a basket and then turns around to greet a U.S. Senator played by Holly Hunter. Holly Hunter, as we know, nothing has been confirmed about her mysterious role in the film, but uh, someone's alleging she's playing a U.S. Senator. I guess earlier today, a picture came out online allegedly of Eisenberg on set, but I haven't run it on Dark Knight News yet because the only site I've seen supporting it is one I had not heard of, and there were some spelling and grammatical mistakes, so I want to see if more sites that I trust pick it up, then I would put it on DKN or one of my colleagues will, but I just want to make sure this actually is Eisenberg on set because I don't want there to be any egg on our face. But people are complaining that this is not Lex Luthor, and even my first impression when I was reading how Lex is acting, is this really how Lex should be? But let's just think that if they're portraying him as a modern 30-year-old self-made billionaire, he would maybe have some modern eccentricities and maybe like to have a little fun around the office and flaunt, like say, hey, look, I have a basketball court in my front lobby, but what is going to make or break Lex Luthor in this film for me, because he is still the film's main villain, is we have to see his motivations are in keeping with Lex Luthor in the comic books, his hatred for Superman, his way of seeing himself as Metropolis' savior and, well, the savior of mankind. As long as Lex still stays true to what makes him Lex, I'm willing to walk out of the film saying, okay, this film is still, keeping in line with what one of my favorite villains is. Yes, Lex Luthor is in my top 3 favorite villains of all time. Michael Rosenbaum's still my favorite portrayal of the character. John Shea was another good one on Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman in the 90s, and he had hair for the first season. But normally when we do see Lex Luthor in comic books before he lost his hair, he does have long hair, maybe a beard like he did in the 90s. This is a man that really loved having hair. And I see it as believable if, Lex has these long flowing locks. He is going to be really pissed when he becomes permanently bald. And then the other, I'm going to segue into Teo Okamoto, who is also playing a mystery character in the film. Comic book fans will know her from The Wolverine last summer. Comicbook.com, I believe, is the one who had this, and granted, this isn't being told by someone like Variety, but comicbook.com, I've found them to be a pretty reliable site when it comes to comic book and movie news, so I'm not going to necessarily call bullshit on them because they're a site I very much like. But they're saying that Teo Okamoto is Mercy Graves, Lex Luthor's right-hand woman, as you'd call it, his kind of, bodyguard hired muscle. Most made popular, I'd say, by Superman the Animated Series, voiced by Lisa Edelstein, or I hope I'm saying her last name. House. That kind of seems like it would be plausible, but what's your take on these Lex rumors we've heard in the past few days?
Well, me and you have talked about it on the phone, and I will say that I liked Eisenberg quite a bit as an actor. I can definitely see people not liking him. I think that it's kind of that same mentality that people put, like, say, Michael Cera in. It's like you don't like him. You think you don't like him as a person because he plays these certain characters or something like that. He's kind of in that almost like hipster tween age, and people see him, even though he's in his 30s. People kind of see him as that hipster thing. the guy's an extraordinary actor. Anyone who doesn't believe it hasn't probably noticed that he's been nominated for Oscars for his acting, or they just haven't watched one of his films. But I do think that the characterization is a little bit of a concern. The only reason is specifically, I do think that there's nothing wrong if they decided to make the character a little bit like his portrayal of Mark Zuckerberg in The Social Network. I mean, you make him the absolute smartest man in the room at all times. That doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to act like the, super severe stoic businessman that you can sometimes see Lex Luthor to be in the comic books or sometimes in his portrayals. I think that if you're trying to say that Lex Luthor can only work as an extraordinarily serious villain, that you need to go back and watch all of the Christopher Reeve Superman films, because he was rarely the least bit serious in any of those films. He came across as a very comic villain, who, he was comic and psychotic at the same time. He was very much, joking and bantering with Superman. Oh yeah, by the way, I'm gonna set off 2 nuclear missiles on opposite sides of the country. You can be both comic and, lethal, which is kind of the scary part. But my ideal portrayal of Lex Luthor, definitely comes in the form of, like Rosenbaum's portrayal of Lex Luthor on Smallville, where you make him a very realistic character. The only thing that I don't think they nailed down in Smallville was, I think that in the DC comics, he is known as the smartest man in the DC universe. He is second to none as far as intelligence. They often refer to him as having like a 12th level intelligence, which is a thing that they will name drop in the DC comics, indicating it's basically the highest level intelligence that you can be, and his weapon is his brain. And if they don't do that right in this film, which I think that they're really trying to nail down the I guess the general conception of these characters as close to the comic books as they can. I know that some people would disagree with that, based on some of the things that happened in Man of Steel, but I really do think that that's their intent, is to get as close to the comic book origins as they can. I think that that's one of Zack Snyder's intentions in every film that he's directed that was based on comic books, which he's done a few now. And I think that if they don't make him a little bit more serious, and you don't give him a little bit of that gravitas, then I think that they're going to, I don't know, I'm going to have some questions about the way that he's portrayed if they don't portray him in that way. But that being said, these are all rumors at this point. They're definitely a lot less concrete in terms of, we don't even know how Batman's going to be portrayed yet. I do think that it would make sense, like Eric said, that he has certain characteristics of a modern 30-year-old billionaire. He's going to be very fast-talking. He's going to have 9 million things going on in his head at a given time. And I think that if people wanted to get a good idea of how I would maybe see a Lex Luthor in terms of the intelligence and being portrayed in a modern convention, think BBC's Sherlock, as played by Benedict Cumberbatch. He texts all the time. It doesn't make him a tweener. It makes him using a readily available technology to do what he needs to do in the easiest, quickest way imaginable. If all of a sudden, sending out texts to a gigantic network of people who give him information is the quickest way for him to get something done, he does it, and it works exceptionally well in that show. And yet he is lethally intelligent, and I think that if they portray him in that manner, then it's going to be interesting. There's also some historical relevance to the whole idea of one of the reasons Lex Luthor hates Superman is because he made him lose his hair. It definitely seems like a little bit of a goofy convention in 2014, and maybe it'll be goofier still in 2016. But Vanity. Vanity is one of the greatest traits of sociopaths. It's one of the most common traits as well. And just to say that you're a genius is not to say that you can't be shallow. So I do think that it's very realistic that something like that could happen. Some type of accident happens, industrial or otherwise, which is how it initially happened when Lex Luthor was portrayed uh, as the mad scientist in the original super or the early Superman comics. Make I think it was Superboy actually who came in, blew out some type of chemical fire and made it so Lex Luthor lost all his hair permanently, and then so he hated Superman ever since. It's definitely a little bit hokey, but it's also to say that it's playing towards that vanity thing that often, like I said, geniuses and sociopaths can sometimes be, because who's more narcissistic than the smartest man on the planet? And it's we'll have to see where it goes from there, but I think that Eisenberg's got the chops to play this character really, really well. I like so many other things, I hope they don't fuck it up. But what else do you have to talk about, Eric? What else did you want to touch on?
This sprung to mind. We were talking about it on the phone the other day, but I would like to just bring up my parallels I'm kind of putting together between Batman versus Superman and Iron Man 2. I'm in the way how Iron Man 2 helped build the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I kind of think that this is going to do it for the DC Cinematic Universe. I really don't know why so many people had a problem with Iron Man 2. Some people said it tied for a solo film, it tied too much into the larger picture, but it included Black Widow and Samuel L. Jackson, but they never felt superfluous to me. They both had defined roles within that script and the way it told the storytelling. They weren't just there to say, hey, I'm Nick Fury, see the Avengers. I mean, at the end of the film, they very much did kind of say, hey, the Avengers are on their way, but a lot of people are saying how much Batman vs. Superman's getting too packed with characters, but a lot of them, some of them are probably just going to be in cameos, and we'll have to see. I hope they're not as superfluous as, say, the Rhino was in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, but it's all going to come down to execution, and let's see the movie before we judge. But here are my parallels, and I would also like to say Iron Man 2 remains one of my favorite Marvel films. Iron Man 1 had the gravitas, good origin story, but Iron Man 2 just was really more of what I wanted from a film called Iron Man. It was very entertaining, a lot of great action pieces, but here are the parallels I'm talking about. We have Batman versus Superman, the core characters who are probably going to fight toward the middle of the movie, like Iron Man and Rhodey, and then come together at the end to perhaps fight a super genius in a robotic suit. Whiplash, Lex Luthor, female hero in a sizable supporting role, Black Widow, Wonder Woman. So many people are saying that Wonder Woman's length of her role will be comparable to that of Black Widow and Iron Man 2. And then, obviously, Cyborg and Aquaman won't have, probably sizable roles of, say, Nick Fury or even Agent Coulson, but you can kind of get how I'm sizing these films up next to each other. But I still have a lot of faith in Batman vs. Superman. Before we move on to talking a little bit about recent comics, anything you want to say on the subject of Batman vs. Superman, DC films in general, before we close that chapter of the week?
No, not much. I will say that when Eric kind of started talking about the parallels between Iron Man 2 and Batman vs. Superman, it was kind of like, wow, yeah, that is kind of funny. I mean, I didn't really think of them in that way. the more I think about it, the more it seems like it has some legitimacy, especially when you talk about or you've seen pictures of Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman from the set where she's in regular casual dress. Is it going to be that character who we think is a normal human or a normal woman, and then all of a sudden she turns on the super and bam, she's Wonder Woman, kind of in the way that Black Widow all of a sudden comes out and shows you that she's a complete badass, and it's kind of like, wait, who are you again? Oh, I'm Natasha Romanoff, and by the way, I'm a super spy. It would kind of be interesting if they kind of do that with Wonder Woman. Oh yeah, by the way, I'm a goddess from the Themyscira, and we've kept ourselves hidden from mankind until now, when aliens almost decided to destroy the entire planet. We realized we can't stay hidden anymore because we almost lost everything we care about. Me and Eric have talked about that a little bit. Why did these characters not come out, again? But that's another story for another day. That's the last thing I have to say about the movie rumors and whatnot. But what else did you want to touch on, Eric?
As listeners of the show know, this is, if we have the time, we'll discuss comics for the week. I am not going to be picking up my comics until tomorrow. I just haven't had the chance to go. Definitely this week I will be picking up Batman and Ra's al Ghul number 32, which is returning to being Batman and Robin next month. And yes, I say Ra's al Ghul because I believe that's the proper way you should say it. I'm not going to go into the whole Ra's and Raish thing today on air. But basically, if you're saying Raish al Ghul, you're kind of combining two different languages. But I digress. I'm going to look around as to what else I'm going to buy tomorrow. I might pick up Batman Eternal number 11, even though I haven't read it since number 5. I believe the first time we talked about Batman Eternal on the show, I said I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to keep up with a weekly, and yes, I was right, though I still intend on reading it as a trade paperback in its entirety. But this week kind of intrigued me. Ian Bertram's art. He did one of the stories in Detective Comics number 27 back in January. His artwork's kind of interesting. You'll have to check it out, Josh. It's even a little wackier than Frank Quitely's, but it's a little bit of a departure from what has been, a very noirish looking Batman Eternal to this point. I will say that no matter what's going on in the story, I am going to buy any issue that's drawn by Jason Fabok. I think he draws the best Batman in the comics industry right now. Maybe I'll pick up an issue of Detective that I missed because I read the most recent Detective from Buccellato and Manapul and really enjoyed it, so I might have to go back and pick up issue 31 if they still have it at my shop. But yeah, I read Detective 32 last week, and I know you're a fan of Manapul's art, but man, it was just so beautiful in number 32, especially when you could see the texture on Batman's cape. It's just such a gorgeous book, but it was a great Batman story as well. I remember a few months ago when we were talking their first issue, which was number 30, and I was saying, it was a good issue, but I don't know if it's going to keep my attention. But I really think that this run of Detective could be something special. Probably won't be as great as what Snyder and Capullo are doing, but it looks like they're doing something great. But Peter Tomasi over in Batman on Robin's really cooking up something. It's getting a little more fantastical than what it initially was, but that seems to be the title that they're going to introduce the new Robin in. Well, Robin Rises Alpha in December is going to be the appearance of whomever's going to be Robin. Is it a resurrected Damian? Is it Carrie Kelly? Speaking of Batman and Robin, I don't mean to talk about stuff that happened last week as much, but I did review the most recent trade, Batman and Robin Volume 4, Requiem for Damian. It's still one of the featured posts on Dark Knight News at the time of this recording, so go check that out. That was pretty good trade, as it were. It's in hardcover right now. I believe the paperback is out late October, early November this year, but we didn't do an episode last week, so that's why I'll plug the review this week. As for the Archie side of things, I haven't received anything in the mail from them this week, but I wouldn't doubt it if they're going to send me Archie number 656 because they're introducing that Harper character. So if I get a copy of that in the mail, expect a review of it on Comic Book Movie probably before the week is out, if I get a copy of it. But that's pretty much all I have to say about comics for the week. There's definitely going to be some good stuff on Rax next week. We're finally, not to talk about what's coming in the near future, but Josh is probably ecstatic that next week is when we get the arrival of the creative team of Geoff Johns and John Romita Jr. Finally, the if you want to call it the flagship Superman title is finally going to get its due, because it's had some real creative woes and hasn't really hit its stride yet in New 52, as opposed to, say, Action Comics, Superman, Wonder Woman, or outside of continuity titles like Smallville. But before I turn it over to you, Josh, I'll have you finish this little thing we have a back and forth on. It's a running joke we've had. Someone we've heard mispronounce Geoff Johns' name before, and I'll say, "Hey, Josh, the book is written by Geoff Johns."
You mean the Geoff Johns? The Geoff Johns? Yeah, that's the joke. It's not much of a joke. It's an inside joke, and hence inside jokes being funny to only the people who tell them. But yeah, the Geoff Johns, he is indeed going to be writing the next iteration of Superman. I absolutely love Geoff Johns. He is phenomenal. I think that outside of Jeff Loeb, which I mean, it's kind of ironic to me that two of the best comic book writers that write the best for almost every single character are both named Jeff. I think that's a little unfair to the rest of people with names, but it is what it is. Geoff Johns is absolutely one of the best comic book writers writing currently, in my opinion. I know Romita's done a lot of good work, and I've seen his upcoming art. And granted, I'm not as just, awe-stricken as some people have been. I know he's a big fan, he's a big favorite amongst Marvel fans. He hasn't really done any DC stuff. In fact, I don't believe he's ever done any DC stuff, or if he has, it's been extremely limited. So that's a big thing that he's finally doing Superman, the character for DC, outside of Batman. And Geoff Johns, the guy just writes characters the way that they should be written every single time he writes them. The fact that he took a character like Aquaman, and literally Aquaman has been enjoyable from day one of the New 52, and in fact, it was one of their better-selling books, if not one of their best-selling books, which is, Aquaman, granted he's an A-list character, but he's always got, B and C-list sales as far as that, and he's got Rodney Dangerfield level respect from the comic book community, outside of the people who really knew the truth about Aquaman, which we talked about earlier, which is that he's awesome. And I think that Geoff Johns, like Jeff Loeb, he just gets to the heart of characters. He gets to their absolute core of what they stand for and what they're all about, and writes them in a way that portrays them at their absolute best. And if you don't believe me, go back and read any of Geoff Johns' Aquaman run. Read some of his really anything that he's done on the DC side. Some of his I'm trying to think of some of the other things that he's done, but that really stand out in my head. I'm sorry, what was that, Eric?
That 9-year run on Green Lantern.
Oh, yeah, I mean, Green Lantern is the obvious one. I was trying to think of more. He's done a few other characters here and there. I mean, he revitalized Green Lantern. I mean, not. We'll get into that more because that's a huge topic. But yeah, he did Green Lanterns for 9 effing years, and he made that universe almost its own separate universe, and they brought that into the Green Lantern film to a point, and that's why another reason it's so sad that Green Lantern universe isn't kind of going to be expanded on, because it's such a robust universe. But that being said, yeah, Jeff Johns is just incredible, as is Jeff Loeb. Those guys know how to write characters. So I'm excited about upcoming Superman. It has been dragging for the last few months. It's very hit or miss. And when you take a character like Aquaman and can make it a more enjoyable comic book than my absolute favorite character in Superman, well, you've done yourself a pretty exceptional thing, and that's definitely what Jeff Johns has done. So I'm very excited to see him finally write, my favorite character. And other than that, I've actually been so remiss in comic books reading. There's been a lot of just excellent TV on lately. Game of Thrones just finished up its season, so I've been investing a lot of my time in that lately, and just droning on, sitting around being lazy in this summer heat. Going outside is not fun, so I've been sitting in my air-conditioned house and enjoying that instead. But that's it for me for the most part. We're almost at the hour, so I definitely think it's time to wrap up. Any other things to say tonight, Eric?
No, I'm going to close it out, but I'll just say other things Johns has written. Well, he's done the big events like Infinite Crisis, Blackest Night, Flashpoint, but when it comes to other books that he's really touched, Teen Titans, of course, people know. I remember you were a big reader of Justice Society of America, but of course we have Green Lantern, Aquaman. He's absolutely killing it on Justice League right now, and of course I loved Batman Earth 1 with the second volume of that should be out next year sometime. But yeah, that's gonna wrap it for me. Yeah, Jeff Johns is awesome, but we'll be back sometime soon whenever the next significant story breaks for us to talk about. I mentioned it on our Facebook page recently. Sarah Michelle, who was a guest of ours way back on episode 5, she'll be returning to the show, or at least most likely will be, sometime in the near future. She's up for it. It's just going to be a matter of when we get her on the show. I'm getting a new computer probably before the month is out. So I'm thinking it's probably going to be maybe July we'll have her on again. But until then, like us on Facebook.com/a podcast for all seasons. And until I see you next time, have a good time, read some comics, and don't pay attention to bullshit rumors. So long, folks.
Yeah, we're signing off. Thanks for joining us again. We'll be back for episode 15 pretty soon. Hopefully it won't be too long. Like I said, we don't want to talk about stupid rumors. Yeah, no, we're not going to give any gravitas to the most random things that you could possibly read on the internet, because let's face it, folks, not everything you read on the internet's true. I'm sorry, pomegranate won't give you infinite life, and not everything that's said on comic book movies, comicbooknews.com is true. Thanks for listening, thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you guys later.